Now, his debut novel, titled The Fisherman, generated huge international excitement when it debuted 9 years ago, and it became a finalist for the Booker Prize. It was written by the Nigerian author Chigozie Obioma, who's now a professor of creative writing at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. His second book, An Orchestra of Minorities, was also nominated for the Booker Prize, and his novels have won the FT Emerging Voices Award for Fiction, the NAACP Image Award, and the Los Angeles Times Award for First Fiction. Well, now he's got a new book out titled The Road to the Country, and it's been getting very positive reviews, including from the New York Times, which recently profiled the book. Well, the author, Professor Obioma, is currently in Nigeria, and he joins me now on the line from Lafia in Nasarawa State. Great to see you, Prof, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just tell us about your new book, The Road to the Country. I understand it's a mystical novel centered around the Nigerian Civil War, and it must be good because, as we mentioned in the intro, it's been getting a lot of positive reviews, and it's recently been profiled by the New York Times.
Well, thank you, Charles. It's been a minute, since we last spoke. So The Road to the Country is a novel about the Nigerian Biafra War, which took place between 1967 to 1970. So this is an actual historical novel. It's actually the one book that I've always known that I was going to write because, I grew up, I'm from Abia State, but I grew up with my parents, in Akure. And then during the MKO Abiola crisis of 1993, was the first time that I remember going to the East, which was the former Biafran enclave. And on getting there, I was a very precocious and curious child. I saw that there were a number of people who were deformed in one way or the other. And so I remember asking my mom, like, what is wrong with these people? Why is it that this, one guy like that, one of our relatives had just one leg and one woman, one arm. And her response was very sharp. She just said, Obaga, which meant it was the war. So, that's the kind of response that generates this curiosity. So over the years, I wanted to understand what is this thing that left its imprint, its physical imprint on the bodies of these people. And so a couple years ago, I began writing the novel, and it was published last year in the UK and the US.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a really good read, and I'm certainly going to get my hands on it. But you've been described as the heir to Chinua Achebe by the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal described you as an original whose writing sounds like no one else's. I mean, how does that make you feel when you read things like that from some of the most respected newspapers in the world?
I mean, it's exciting. It's very exciting because, see, when I began to write, I was growing up in Akure from a very large family. I'm one of 12 children. So, and I wouldn't say that we were very rich or anything, though my dad worked in the central bank for a lot of years. But I just remember, like, once the bug of writing became the thing that I knew I was going to do, all I really wanted was that someday someone would read me. So it's very interesting that not just am I read, people buy the books, people give it awards, and, I get to appear on places like this. So, I'm humbled by everything.
Indeed, but it's well deserved, I have to say, because I remember that The Fisherman, I mean, that was absolutely sensational. I mean, when it came out, and the excitement that it generated. I mean, you and I were in London at the time, and I remember interviewing you on Arise News at the time. I mean, absolutely remarkable stuff. Now, you've been writing now, Prof, for upwards of a decade, I mean, probably longer. Would you say that you've found your literary voice, and in that regard, with more experience, writing for you has become easier?
Well, I don't know that one finds that voice. I probably will be nearing my grave, Charles, maybe 90, when I eventually find it. But I would say that, you do, it's like wine, you do grow with more experience. Simply because, when you practice something, and I've dedicated my life to this thing, I hope that there's some growth that one gets. So to that extent, I would say that obviously my books progressively get better and perhaps more complicated. I mean, I've taken on the Biafran War, which is, really a very difficult thing because, the scale of the war. But also, I found that even though there's a whole canon of what has been written about that novel, there's very few books about the details of the war itself, that are fiction. So there are wartime novels where the war is the background, but a sort of All Quiet on the Western Front novel that actually details the battles and the lives of the soldiers. This is what I've just written.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it sounds like a really jolly good read. But I mean, do you ever feel that you're running out of ideas? I mean, or is there lots of material and the challenge for you is selecting and deciding on what to write about?
No, no, I don't run out of ideas at all. I don't know what it is, but I usually have at least, 4 or 5 different stories on different scales, obviously, and different levels of development at a given point in time. I guess I drank some holy water while growing up, and the inspirations just keep coming. What I do feel sometimes, though, is a sort of a challenge because, see, fiction is difficult to write and you want to distinguish yourself. As a professor, I always tell my students that the worst thing you can do as a writer is to write a disposable book. So I try to leave that example. What I mean is a book that people read and they forget after a couple of days or a week or a month. So I want to write that thing that holds you, that you don't forget, that you keep thinking about for days, weeks, months, even years. So that is a very difficult thing to do.
Indeed. And how much does what you write about reflect your own personal evolution as well as that of Nigeria? I mean, I suppose your latest book reflects sort of that a bit of that, doesn't it?
Yes, see, I want to say that I've always been writing about Nigeria. It's just the one thing that I don't know, for some reason I'm wedded. Me and Nigeria, we have like a very strange marriage. The fisherman was a metaphor for the country, this entity that was disparate nation states merged, by a prophet who says to them, the British, this is how you will live now, a sort of a prophetic voice. And that unraveling between the brothers happens. An Orchestra of Minorities, my second novel, which was also a finalist for the Booker Prize, it charts the Igbo history, really. In fact, it's the narrator of that novel is the Chi. That is the individual index of divinity that Igbos, in Igbo cosmology is believed to ensoul every individual. So it's a 700-year-old spirit that keeps reincarnating and essentially through the novel tells the entire history of Igbo, civilization for 700 years. So it was a daunting task. And now, this is a sort of a seminal history in Nigeria's, a seminal point in Nigeria's history, because I believe that the rise and fall of the Biafran nation state is you can trace many of the malaise of our nation state today to that singular event.
Right. And one writer once said that it's a huge thrill starting to write a novel and a huge relief finishing the book. But when you're in the middle and a long way from either end, it can be miserable. Has that been your experience?
Certainly so. Certainly so. This is funny because I'm a professor of writing. When people come to me and they say to me, very young people, I want to write, Professor Obioma, I want to write, devote my life to writing fiction. I always take a step back and I'm like, hey, Helene or John or Chidinma, are you sure you don't want to become a doctor? Are you sure that engineer, in you is not what you want to do? Just because, it can be an arduous task, and thankless job. But I'll say that I wouldn't trade this for anything. It's brought me basically every door that has opened for me in my life is in fact as a result of the fishermen, really. And there's a joy that comes from actually creating this universe, because it's a universe that you actually create. So you're creating not necessarily people, but avatars of people. So in some ways, this may sound cliche, but you are sort of a godlike figure when you are in the process of these literary creations. So there's definitely a thrill. Even me, of course, everything that is worth doing or that is substantive would have its own drag. So there are frustrating moments, especially with this novel. There were points in which I would stop because what I have recreated are the battles as they actually the essential as essential battles of that war. So I've just drawn them out in very serious detail. So the moments when I would pause for days, even I would be like, what, this is just because it actually did happen to people. Take the battle, of the Biafran Fort Marine Commando against Muritala Mohammed First Division, just outside of outside of I think Onisha. It was quite bloody. These are this was like a Biafran company, or two companies, so to speak, that were very under-equipped and was in fact the most equipped forces of the units of the Biafran military, facing tanks, artillery, air support, and these men and women dogging, and they fought for days, and they were able to in fact prevail. So we saw a sort of humanity in a sort of an essential form. When people want to do something, that human drive for me is very strong, and this is why I feel like this novel should be studied, because we need to understand some of the things that have happened, some of the things that people have done, blood that was shed, just like in any country. The US, for instance, the Civil War is what has created America's present moment. The same thing with the Second World War. It completely changed Europe, and I think that the Biafran Nigeria War did the same for Nigeria.
Indeed. And you talked about, we're coming to the end of the chat, so I'll try to be brief. But I mean, you talked about avatars, and somebody said that writers are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. And you talked about that in the context of your breakthrough novel, The Fisherman. I mean, how much of a thrill was it for you when you realized that it had become something of a literary sensation? And I mean, were you surprised that it had become such a success?
Charles, let me tell you what happened. The book received extremely great reviews, more than I ever imagined. Then it went off the radar for a couple months. And then all of a sudden, I remember the day that it was announced, the Booker Prize long list of 2015. I had just flown to Nigeria and I was about to have lunch with my brother. And I just remember that the list was going to be released that day. So I just told him, I'm like, Mike, okay, just check who is on that list. And he just opened the phone and began to scream, and my life changed. The very next day, about 20 translations were sold. So it's always a surprise. And I will tell you, I obviously my life has changed. I'm, who I am today, but it was not something that I saw coming at all. I just was writing like anybody else.
Very interesting. I mean, it's astonishing, really, how things change in people's lives. So now you've got 3 hit novels in the bag. I don't know whether the third one has actually become a hit yet, but it may well be in the process of becoming one. I mean, what's next for you? Are you working on a 4th novel or something completely different?
So something completely different. I feel like I need to I'm trying to write a book about my life, which would also uh, bring in, it will be a memoir, but also a sort of a thesis on writing. And in fact, my philosophical thoughts and everything, even, I would say a few things about the kingdom of God in the Christian sense, which I'm quite interested in these days. So yes, I expect to come up with a sort of a memoir next.
Well, I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us, and congratulations on your success. And I hope the latest book also exceeds the success of the first 2 novels that you've written. Professor Chigozie Obioma is an author, and he's also a professor of creative writing. He's talking to me on the line there from Lafia in Nasarawa State.